over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. Opened the earth, walking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife. She challenged the fire, pulled from the bodies of slaves, made into laws, prisons, and courts. Screaming white-hot flames and agony, she challenged millions of headhunters, dragging and ripping apart impossible tender moments of time, shipping vessels of history, ancient history, destroying the fabric, the godlike claw of destiny, of a people, with a gun, a knife, a cannon, building the hideous wall of blood called slavery.
Greetings, and as always, welcome back. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is ending temporary protected status, or TPS, for Haitian nationals residing in the United States, potentially affecting around 500,000 people. Why? The U.S. deposes Haiti's democratically elected president twice, assassinates another one, decimates Haiti's economy, pays Kenya to act as the minstrel face of American hegemony, and now this? Make it make sense. Where's the humanity in any of this? Again, I ask, why? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. Before we get to my guest, let's quickly look at a couple of headlines. The Senate passes Trump's tax bill, sending it to the House for final passage. The bill extends tax cuts from Trump's first term, slashes roughly $1 trillion from Medicaid and other healthcare programs. It would also make cuts to SNAP, the Anti-Hunger Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. So yes, they are taking food out of the mouths of hungry children. Nearly 12 million people will lose health care coverage if the bill becomes law. And this is according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Where's the humanity in this? Make it make sense. Zohran Mamdani clinches the Democratic nomination for the New York City mayor position. He was way ahead after the ballots were counted last week, but because New York has a ranked choice voting system, the election could not be called until the second choice votes were counted earlier today. The question that before us here is, how will the Democrat Party elite react? Pay close attention to this election. If the Democrats turn on Mamdani the way they turned on Bernie Sanders, this could have national implications. And finally, at least 95 were killed in Gaza as Israeli forces bomb cafe and shoot aid seekers. At least one journalist was killed and another injured. Medical sources told Al Jazeera yesterday that Israeli attacks killed at least 95 Palestinians in Gaza throughout the day as Israeli forces bombed a seaside cafe and gunned down more desperate people who were seeking aid. According to the Palestinian news agency Rafah, an Israeli airstrike hit the Al-Baqwa Cafe in Gaza City, killing 33 and injuring 50 others. Among the dead was journalist Ismail Abu Hattab, bringing the total number of Palestinian journalists killed since October 7th to 227. The atrocities continue, folks, while Donald Trump will host Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House on July 7th. I guess there is no honor amongst thieves. On today's episode, the issue before us is the Trump administration ends legal protections for 500,000 Haitians who now face deportations. The Department of Homeland Security said last Friday it is terminating legal protections for hundreds of thousands of Haitians, setting them up for potential deportation. Homeland Security said that conditions in Haiti have improved and Haitians no longer meet the conditions for temporary legal protections. My guest is a distinguished faculty of arts professor of African and African diaspora studies in the Institute of Race, Gender, Sexuality, and Social Justice, and faculty associate in the Department of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver. She's also a research associate at the Center for the Study of Race, Gender, and Class at the University of Johannesburg. She is Dr. Jemima Pierre. And as always, I am so thrilled when you join me. You are so gracious every time I call. Welcome and thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Wilmer. Good to be here.
Thank you. Brother Malcolm told us, quote, "I will never say that progress is being made. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there is no progress. If you pull it out all the way, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that's below, that the blow made. And they haven't even begun to pull the knife out, much less pull. Heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there," end quote. Homeland Security said that conditions in Haiti have improved and Haitians no longer meet the conditions for the temporary legal protections. Really? What is your family saying about the conditions on the ground, Dr. Jemima Pierre?
Well, the conditions on the ground remain really grave. They've actually gotten, I think, a lot worse than we all anticipated, partly because there's just this unfettered access to guns and ammunition coming from the U.S. in particular, but also these days people are tracing some of it to Colombia and also the border of the border that we share on the island that we share with the Dominican Republic. And so part of the situation is that, in the same way that you've had tons of military grade equipment make their way to the Caribbean and Latin America from the U.S. Over the past few decades, you see this taking grip of Haiti right now. And so the Port-au-Prince, which is the capital of Haiti, still has a lot of armed groups terrorizing the population. And, the U.S. is definitely, I'm sure we'll get into this, but the reason we're in this position, Haiti has never been a place with high crime, with a lot of, military grade weapons, but now we see these things are being dumped into the country, and we think it's done purposefully to keep the place in chaos so that the U.S. can better control it. But at the same time, we have a foreign military mission in Haiti that the U.S. was behind. We have these Kenyans that are just sitting around Haiti, and then apparently the puppet government that the U.S. and its foot soldiers, CARICOM, which is the Caribbean community, installed. I heard in the news that basically hired Eric Prince, the mercenary, to basically come and combat the so-called gangs in Haiti. So the situation in Haiti is not gotten better; it's gotten worse, and primarily because of the continuing meddling and violence brought on by the U.S. empire.
Robert Brown, thank you so much for that $10 super sticker. Greatly appreciate it. So when you mention the name of Eric Prince, mercenary extraordinaire, gun for hire, what does that really mean? Is he bringing private armed forces onto the island as well? Is he just being brought on to manage those troops that are there? What's your understanding of what are they bringing him there to do?
Right. Well, everybody's making money, right, off of this administration. So he gets his own little
fiefdom
grant. Yeah, he gets his own little he gets the contracts, right? He gets the multi-million-dollar contract to basically bring people. The U.S., as we know, as we've seen, they don't want to bring their own soldiers into, and this is the new empire, right? It works through proxies. And even in Iraq, if we remember, it was all these what they call contractors, which are mercenaries, right? I mean, Eric Prince is a mercenary. And so what they do is basically do, mercenaries for hire. And the Kenyans that are in Haiti are mercenaries for hire. They were brought in. The UN, they're saying they're under a UN mission. It's not a proper UN mission. The UN just basically washed its hands of Haiti, even though it causes a problem in Haiti's under UN occupation as we speak. And so it's signed on to these Kenyans, these Kenyan police who are just sitting in Haiti, but being funded by the US, and everybody's getting their money. And Eric Prince is just the latest. And what last we heard, he was trying to recruit former Haitian American military officials who are in the U.S. to go and create a small army to send to Haiti. And apparently there's been a lot of drone attacks against armed groups, so-called armed groups, and a lot of people killed that they're saying are gangs. We don't know. But apparently he's the reason behind that, these like major armed drone assaults on in certain areas of Haiti. What this brings is really more chaos than actually support, because what it does is anyone who's young men, innocent civilians are going to get caught in this. And so the idea that they have these foreign mercenaries who don't know much about the country, who are given, millions of dollars in contracts to come in Haiti to supposedly pacify the people is already something that's actually going to wreak more havoc in the country.
And you just spoke to this, but I want to highlight it because I think there are two great questions here. One, Falcon Eye, where's the UN? If a country is in need of assistance in any form, the UN should be able to provide some sort of peacekeeping efforts. And Falcon Eye, great question, but I believe that question is framed in the context of how things are, the perception of the UN, but the reality is the United States controls the United Nations, and Dr. Pierre, you just spoke on this, but I'd like for you to answer that question directly.
Well, yes. I mean, as we're seeing right now, as we're seeing in terms of like the ongoing genocide in Gaza that the UN cannot stop, right? As we're seeing the IAEA being used as a weapon of the West against Iran, right? We know that these international organizations are not international organizations. They are weapons of the West to use against those of us who fight back.
They
And
are
so
not
we begin
independent.
we begin like that. And so the UN is not a democratic institution. I've always said this because you cannot have a democratic institution of 190 some countries where you have 5 permanent members who have veto power. So you can have the majority of the world sign on like against the genocide in Gaza, and you have one country can stop it. And so to me, the UN, so that's the first. The UN is not an international organization. It's used as a machinery to uphold Western hegemony, and that's been the case since it was created after World War II. The second thing is Haiti is actually under UN occupation. And for people who don't know, because Haiti only shows up in the news every once in a while, is that the US, France, and Canada in 2004 removed our democratically elected president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. They sent the US Marines into his house, put him on a plane, and flew him out of the country, and then installed a completely different government. And since 2004, and then the UN, 2 members of this UN Security Council who were part of the coup d'etat convinced the UN to send a supposed peacekeeping force to Haiti. That peacekeeping force in Haiti lasted from 2004 up until 2017. During that time, the UN brought cholera to Haiti that killed 40,000 people and sickened 1 million. The UN soldiers raped so many people. In fact, there are lawsuits against the UN soldiers for all the children that they left behind after they left. And the UN occupation was a major disaster. It caused so much death and misery to Haiti. When the UN, the bulk of the soldiers left Haiti in 2017, they left a UN office called the BNU office, which basically has a mandate. And the UN has something called the core group, which is a group of unelected officials that have no Haitian in it, that basically determine what happens to Haiti. So for example, when the Haitian president was assassinated in 2021, it was the core group, which has no Haitians in it, was the core group, which includes Germany, France, the U.S., Canada, the European Union. They're the ones that basically handpicked who Haiti's prime minister is going to be. So the UN has been very complicit in the occupation, in the foreign occupation of Haiti, and it continues. Everything that's happened in the last 20 years, 21 years, has been under this UN occupation. There's still a UN office in Haiti. So you ask, where's the UN? The UN is sitting in Haiti and overseeing the destruction of the state and overseeing the destruction of security for the Haitian people. That's what the UN does. The UN for us is an occupying force. So there's that. And the US uses the UN to its needs. And the UN has also worked in a way that, when you look at the WikiLeaks papers, from 2008, where you have I forgot her name, Sanderson is her last name. I think she was one of the ambassadors to Haiti, saying that the occupation of Haiti, the UN-led so-called peacekeeping mission, the occupation in Haiti is perfect for U.S. policy because it's a cheap thing. It has all these countries involved in occupying Haiti, but the U.S. doesn't have to send its own soldiers or spend all the money, and it has all these other countries participating, have a say in how to control Haiti. So Haiti is, his state has been dismantled in the last 20 years. Its security's been gone. All that was done after the U.S. led this coup d'etat, which was then consecrated by the UN, and the UN has supported this undemocratic situation in Haiti ever since.
You mentioned the overthrow of Aristide and sending Marines into Aristide's home. There's always been this discussion about General Powell's involvement in that, whether it was the first time or the second time. There are stories that Powell was actually the one that went to Aristide and said, hey, bruh, you got to go. Do you have any insight into what Powell's actual involvement was in the overthrow of former President Father Jean-Bertrand Aristide.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know the clear details of Powell. I do know Powell was very much, if you read the newspapers from that time, from 2002 to 2004, right before the coup d'etat, what you have is the George W. Bush administration really against the Aristide government, not wanting the Aristide government to go. And it was Powell. And I know, I think, the person that worked with Powell at the time is also Larry Wilkerson, who worked as Powell's chief of staff. They were very much pushing for regime change in Haiti. And we have to remember that. And so Powell was very much part of the George W. Bush administration. What's interesting is that I'm not sure how close he was in, because even weeks before the coup d'etat happened, he was saying we're not for regime change in Haiti. If you read his works, but then again went behind it. And so we know how the U.S. uses connives behind your back, and then says one thing and does another. What did happen though was I forgot his name, the ambassador of the U.S. ambassador to Haiti was very much behind the scene during this coup d'etat. In fact, he drove in with the U.S. Marines and basically threatened Aristide. And then after they put Aristide on these, in the cars and took him to the airport, what the U.S. ambassador did at the time is basically go to the Supreme Court Justice's house, the Haitian Supreme Court Justice's house, and the Haitian Prime Minister's house, and basically the U.S. ambassador swore in the Haitian Chief Justice as like the temporary person in charge of Haiti while they worked to bring in some this guy named Latour, who had not lived in Haiti for 30 years, and brought him in and made him prime minister. So part of that is just, it's absurd to think about how Haiti is a vassal state. It is a vassal state, but we see Haiti happens. Haiti is very specific in the sense that one thing I wanted to quickly say as an aside is the coup d'etat against Haiti's elected president happened after the U.S. and Europeans had a sort of falling out after the U.S. invaded Iraq. I don't know if you remember, there was so much protest from the U.S. allies against the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and in fall 2004. It's through Haiti that they made up. So France and remember we were talking about freedom fries and all this stuff when France was against the invasion, but with Haiti, they all made up. The Europeans, the Canadians, and the Americans made up over the destruction of the Haitian state and the removal of Haiti's elected president.
Let me see. Robert Brown asks, what is the African Union's position on Haiti?
The first thing we have to ask is who funds the African Union, right? And so who funds the African Union is not all African states. The majority of the African Union's funding comes from the European Union and from other sources. So that already tells us this is not an independent institution. In fact, remember when the Sahel states, came up and ECOWAS was trying to go against Mali, Burkina Faso, right? With these coups d'etats, the African Union did not stand up for this. The African Union, then we have to think about how it, in theory, it's a good thing. In another, though, and the African Union is very much compromised and very much dependent on the West. And until we get a fully autonomous African organization, the African Union will just basically follow what the U.S. says. And they haven't said anything about the fact that the U.S. brought in Kenyan mercenaries all the way from 12,000 miles away to be in Haiti. They have not said anything about that, and so I don't expect them to say anything now.
That's a great point. So it's what we're hearing now from Homeland Security is coming 3 months after the administration revoked legal protections for thousands of Haitians who arrived legally in the country under a humanitarian program, and it's part of a series of measures that are being now implemented to curb immigration. All of this is happening while Trump officials are resettling 1,000 Afrikaners who Trump falsely claims are victims of genocide. You also work at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. Connect some of those dots here for me.
Well, one of the key things that should come up in this, and especially when it comes with targeting of migrants, is we cannot discount the fact that part of this idea of making America great again is making America white, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we have to know that the anti-immigrant fervor in this country is very much racialized.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing we have to remember is that the U.S. has been bringing in Ukrainian migrants and asylum seekers since the start of Russia's special military operation by the thousands, right? And some people say the number is almost at like 1 million, between 500,000 and 1 million in the past 3 years coming into the U.S. Canada, I know for a fact, has brought in at least 1 million Ukrainians, right? This is at the same time that you have constant deportations. Under the Biden regime, under the first Trump regime, the Obama regime, Obama was known as deporter in chief. They were deporting primarily migrants of color.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, there's TPS for Ukrainians. That's not being revoked. And the fact that they want to bring in white South Africans, Afrikaners in particular, that tells you everything you need to know in terms of like the racialization of migrants and a particular way of understanding what they see as migrants, the kind of migrants that they want. And Trump has been very clear that he prefers European migrants. He said that. I think there's an article, there's an interview he gave where he was very anti-Haitian, where he's like, well, he prefers them. Haiti is a shithole country, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, why can't we get nice migrants like the ones from Europe? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
so there's that. There's also for Haiti in particular, and I wanted to just take this aside for a second. This is not new. This is a long-standing discussion about Haiti and Haitian migrants, mistreatment of Haitian migrants. That has everything to do. That goes back to the 1700s with the Haitian Revolution that destroyed slavery and so on. And so you can have media representation of Haiti through time from the 1800s on. I think I've said this before, where like the New York Times had this headlines like Haitians ate a U.S. Marine while the the first occupation of Haiti from 1915 to 1934. And you see the way that they report on Haiti over time as if we're cannibals, we're savages, and so on. But
wait a minute. To that point, they also reported that the activist barbecue that he got his nickname from because he ate people, right, ignoring the fact his nickname came from his mother selling barbecue
right,
to feed her family.
Right. And so with Haiti is very, very easy. So it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to demonize these people. I hope people remember, for example, just last year, right before Trump received or right after he received the nomination, him and J.D. Vance coming out saying that Haitians were eating, the Haitians in Ohio, legal immigrants, by the way, were eating pets, were eating the people's pets, which became a meme all over the country and throughout the world, and everybody's making jokes and Trump doubling down on this accusation, this very racist accusations that that Haitians eat pets and so on. But before that, we remember September 2021, where you had Haitian migrants at the border in Del Rio, Texas, being people say whipped by white Texas Rangers on horseback, which was like a bad image for people. We remember in the early 1990s where Haitians were treated by the CDC as the carriers of AIDS. We were one of the 4 H's besides hemophiliacs, homosexuals, and I forgot the other group, but there's only ethnic group that was basically saying that they were carriers of AIDS, so they wouldn't allow them. Haitians were the first people that were sent to Guantanamo Bay, illegally, going against international conventions, refugee conventions. So instead of letting people coming in and ask for asylum, they sent them to Guantanamo Bay and put them in outdoor camps. This is before Guantanamo Bay became the place for the global war on terror. We also have to remember
Wait a minute. I went to Gitmo. I saw those cages. I stood in that space. You are absolutely right. They were dog runs. They were concrete slabs, cyclone fencing in the brutal sun of Cuba. I mean, hot. Very, very hot. It was as inhumane as it could possibly be. I just have to reiterate your point, because now I wasn't there when the Haitians were there. I was there after. There weren't any people there when I was standing there, but I saw they were cages. You are absolutely right.
And people can look up, these pictures are still online in terms of you can look up Haitians in Guantanamo Bay. In fact, it was it's set up by a series of lawsuits. But even before that, you have the Chrome Detention Center in the 80s. Held Haitians, and the situation was so bad that a judge had to say you have to basically take everyone out of that. So there's a long history of racist treatment of Haitian migrants, Haitian people, Haitian people, and then Haitian migrants, which gets covered. And Trump has, Obama and Biden are interesting in the sense that they will deport hundreds of thousands of people, but smile in your face and not say the explicit racist stuff that Trump says, right? Obama deported more Haitians than all other presidents combined. Biden deported more Haitians than Obama, right? So what's happening now is a continuation of U.S. policy specifically against Haitians. And that's not to say that so then you have also Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba, places that the U.S. antagonized for decades, right? And so part of that, there's a combination of things happening that allows a mix of anti-Black racism, anti-immigrant stuff, as well as views about the global South by the movement now, the MAGA movement here, because part of this, by the way, is Trump trying to throw raw meat at his base to try to cover his foreign policy failures that are against his base, him trying to attack Iran and so on and so forth. So, for the MAGA crowd, that's for him, that's immigration, immigrants of color, because it's not about immigration. Because if it was about immigration, you would not be bringing in white South Africans and hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. It's about trying to get rid of a particular group of people, and especially the same people whose countries you've ruined, right? And that's what's happening right now when it comes to this. But I do want people to understand that this is a long history of Haiti bearing the brunt of U.S. immigration policy. And I think it's an important thing because you have to link that to Haiti's history with the West and with the U.S. in particular.
A couple of things I want to jump around on that we've discussed, but I want to quickly elaborate. One is you've mentioned Gaza a couple of times in this conversation. Oh, let me quickly say to Tariq Tucker, I see you, my brother. Thank you very much for joining the conversation today, and thank you for the compliment. Good to see you, Tariq. We'll wrap. You mentioned Gaza a couple of times here. Could you quickly, one of the things you hear me say on the show all the time is people have the people will in many instances see these issues as though they exist in a vacuum or in silos. They don't understand the interrelatedness of these issues. That's why we are here connecting the dots. You've mentioned Gaza a couple of times. There are very similar actions being taken against the Palestinians in the Zionist settler colonial state called Israel, and what's being done to Haitians.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in Haiti is terrible. I can't say that it's similar, is the same as what's happening in Gaza.
I'm
This
speaking in terms of
bombing.
mindset.
Oh, yes, definitely. In terms of
In
the
terms of mindset.
dehumanization, yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. What's happening in Gaza is horrendous. I can't even imagine, because at least in Haiti, people can try to run away. They're not in a cage, right? And so there's that. But you're right, in terms of the way that we can have a genocide go on. Some people say the numbers assassinated are more than, are almost like 400,000. And then when you see children being shot in the heart, in the groin, see children being
Shot in the
starved to
eye.
death, dying, leaving babies in incubators. The way that Palestinians are treated, Americans would be outraged if their dogs were treated that way, if their pets were treated that way. And so the only way to understand this is this deep, deep, deep dehumanization, where it's worse than dehumanization, because you wouldn't even let your animals be treated the way that people in Gaza are being treated. And so in that sense, yes, there's a dehumanization of the other, in particular others, those that fight back in particular.
Right.
And so what you do, the way you do it, you dehumanize them, and you make it seem like, so that their lives, so when you get the news that that the UN is responsible for bringing cholera to Haiti, that killed 40,000 people, for dumping their feces in our water. That's how they brought cholera. They were dumping their feces in the water, in the river that people used to drink, to eat, to wash, and so on. This is how they brought cholera. Where the fact that the UN is responsible for the deaths of all these people, no one bats an eyelash in the mainstream news media, tells you how dehumanizing the treatment of Haiti is, and Haitian people are. And we can see that similarity in terms of, like, how do we sit here 21 months later with so many children? You see gunshots in their heads, you see them amputated, and the world is not outraged, and we cannot do anything about it. It tells us everything we need to know about the way the West sees the rest of the world, and the way that they can dehumanize in order for them to maintain their full spectrum dominance. I think Dr. Leon was frozen. Yeah. So I think we lost Dr. Leon. And so I guess I wanted to talk about one of the things that Obama did, that I think is important for us to know, to why it is that we're at the situation that we are now, is that the reason that there's so many is the shift of Haitian migration and migration of other groups to South America and to Mexico in particular. We have to think about that. Trump started this policy when he was in power at first, to call the Remain in Mexico policy. And what people don't realize is that international law dictates that anyone can go to any country and request asylum. And so people were doing that in the U.S. For a long time, coming through, especially migrants from Central America, from South America, and then Haitians started coming because they were coming from Brazil, asking for asylum. And so the U.S. went against international law and basically started not just holding asylum seekers in place, but also the other thing that they were doing is, Trump had this thing called a Remain in Mexico policy, where instead of allowing people to come to the border to ask for asylum, he basically had this system where they remained in Mexico until they gave them a number to come and request asylum, which basically created a bottleneck of people requesting asylum and refugees stuck in Mexico. And then under Obama, you had this thing called metering. No, I think it's under Trump and Obama. They both continued it, this metering, where basically they would give you an appointment to come request an asylum, which at the same time that the U.S. Was forcing Almo, the president of Mexico, to basically, he worked along with the Trump administration to actually hold on to these immigrants and prevented them from asking for asylum. So the numbers of asylum seekers in Mexico swell, so that by the time these asylum seekers left the Tijuana border and headed towards Texas, it seemed like they came from out of nowhere, that you had like 15,000 to 19,000 migrants showing up there. But that's because of a long policy of U.S. immigration for the past 10 years at least, of basically limiting, bringing down to a flow, a slow flow, a trickle, I should say, not even a flow, a trickle of migrants coming through the U.S.-Mexico border. And so we also have to actually keep that in mind when we think about how it is that these migrants get stuck in Mexico and so on. Yeah.
And folks, I'm sorry, I got lightning strike, got taken. We're in the midst of a huge thunderstorm here. So I'm back. And Dr. Pierre, thank you so much for carrying the load in my absence. One of the other issues that I wanted that we touched on were these South Africans. And I believe that part of Donald Trump's scheme is with South Africa having charged the Zionist colony with genocide before the World Court. Donald Trump is now bringing in these South Africans saying, you see, South Africa is engaged in genocide as well, even though we know it's not. That he's using this trope as a way to minimize or diminish the South African claim against Israel.
I agree. I think that's a good part of it. The other part of it is we're not talking enough about the Southern Africans who basically ensconce themselves in the U.S. government. So you have Elon Musk, who has South African. I think there are three people. I think Gerald Horne I keep forgetting the third one. So you have Elon Musk and Peter Thiel.
Right.
Peter Thiel is the one that sponsors J.D. Vance, who's from Southern Africa. So Peter Thiel's also, I think, isn't he the one that runs Palantir, right?
Yes.
Which just got the multi-million-dollar grant from the U.S., I think, Department of Defense, to basically create a database of U.S. citizens.
Palantir, grandson, is another one.
Right. And Palantir is also the company that IAEA used through Mosaic, which was just released. I don't know if the IAEA, which is the International Atomic Energy, that basically gave the go-ahead for Israel to attack because it lied about Iran's nuclear capabilities. Well, Palantir they used this Palantir program called Mosaic that basically enhanced the information and made it seem like Iran was about to create a nuclear weapon within days. And that's what they used. And so let's talk about these connections, right? The South African connection in the U.S. government is something that we have to think about. And even what's his name, former Steve Bannon. Remember at one point, and he's just like, "Who are all these who are all these foreigners, influencing Trump?" And so I do think there's something much more sinister about the bringing in these white immigrants. On the one hand, yes, it perfectly fits, right? You don't want Black and brown immigrants. You want white immigrants, right? On the other hand, there is something to be said about bringing in specifically South Africans when you are bankrolled by these South African foreigners, immigrants, who basically have ensconced themselves within the U.S. government. That is a problem, and that's something we should all think about.
Some of the names we've got We've got Elon Musk, David
Peter
Sachs.
Thiel. Yeah, right.
David
And
Sachs
Peter Thiel.
and Peter Thiel. David Sachs was born in Cape Town. Peter Thiel, raised in South Africa. Ernie Els, the golfer Ernie Els. Johan Rupert is another one. And again, I don't remember his name, but I know his last name is, oh shoot, I just say his father was or grandfather was a president. I just mentioned his name. Anyway, okay, we got him covered. Final point, going back to Haiti, and you've got, remember the earthquake, and the organizing group was Bill Clinton, Botha, thank you. Pick Botha's grandson is another one. But we go back to the so-called Haitian Relief Effort Organizing Committee was George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. They were the three that were responsible for all this. And so the question became, what happened to the money? As the Clinton Foundation was supposed to be building houses and doing, what happened to the money? We don't know. But your thoughts, I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, it's always good to bring up Clinton, because he's, one of the things, what happened to the money is they stole the money. So that's a quick response. Like, Clinton made a killing off of this money. He was doing private ventures, there's hotels and so on and so forth, owning of land. Hillary Clinton gave her brother one of the first gold mining licenses in Haiti. The Red Cross, the U.S. Red Cross raised $500 million and built 6 houses. And so that's
those
important.
Must be very nice houses. 5 houses at $6 million raised. Those must be very nice houses.
Till this day, we don't know what the Red Cross did with $500 million. It was a bonanza, the earthquake in Haiti. But to link this back to this conversation, actually, about TPS, the TPS is a temporary protected status, was actually first extended to Haitians, because this is a law from the 1990 immigration law that gave protected status to some countries. So some of it was like Bosnia when the U.S. was bombing Yugoslavia and some of these states. So the first time the TPS was extended to Haitians was actually after the 2010 earthquake. That brought in the temporary status for migrants. That they gave them temporary status because the country was devastated, and so people who had come and asked for asylum, instead of giving them a pathway to citizenship, they basically kept it a temporary a solution, right? And I think that's also significant, because there are many ways to deal with migration. You can allow people a pathway to immigration. You can help fix their countries instead of keeping their countries ruined because you're the one that ruined their country. Or you can figure something that's more permanent, like pass another immigration law. They did not do any of that, which means that the reason it's so easy to get rid of TPS is because it's always been a temporary process. And I think that's one of the things we need to do in terms of thinking about how to deal with immigration more forward, is that it leaves it totally at the discretion of the president. So they can say, while all this stuff is happening in Haiti, while the U.S. has a level 4 alert to Americans to not go to Haiti, you're saying, we're going to send you back to Haiti because everything is fine, right? Mind you, I also have to say quickly that Trump also put a travel ban against Haiti. So Haiti was one of the few countries, the countries, remember, he just had a travel ban against Afghanistan. Is it Afghanistan?
Yes.
Is it Iran?
Yes.
Iran, Afghanistan. I can't remember the other countries, but Haiti, out of the blue, so he has the very specific animus towards our people. So just out of the blue, he took Haiti out. He put Haiti on the travel ban and so on. So I think it's important, because from the earthquake from 2004 until this moment, it's just been nothing but havoc being wreaked on the country by the U.S. government. And at the same time, we're being blamed for the havoc that it's creating in our country. Look, no one wants to leave their country. People don't want to leave their country. People don't want to risk getting on a boat crossing, the forests of Colombia and Central America to make it to the U.S. unless they're absolutely desperate. That's what people have to remember. Haitian people are proud people. They love their country. They love wanting to be in the States, but they've been put in a place where it's impossible to live there because of foreign meddling, because the U.S. wants to control us. And so that's one thing I just have to say, like, this is not like begging for help just because. We are a proud people. We did not want to leave our country. We left it because we were forced to. And so talking about temporary asylum, having this man call our country a shithole country, calling us all kinds of names of dog eaters and so on and so forth. I think that's terrible. But what's bad is also the continued intervention and occupation of Haiti, the continued treatment of Haiti, even if they don't use the same words as Trump, by Obama, by Clinton, by Biden, by the Democratic establishment that continues to work the same policies, even though they use different languages. So I just wanted to go on this rant. For that.
No need to apologize. Thank you.
I cannot hear you, Wilmer.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can the audience hear me? Folks, can you hear me? Melody, can you hear me? Melody, what's going on here? Hang on a second. Okay. Okay. While Dr. Pierre is working her end, maybe she should reboot. It looks like she is. Okay. Again, folks, on my end, we've huge thunderstorms which are impacting the East Coast. In fact, I saw a report earlier today that airline travel is going to be directly affected by the storm. So this is a huge storm. Hopefully Dr. Pierre is rejoining us now. And are you back?
I'm back and I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm glad you used the word desperation, because when you use that word, it takes me back to an article written maybe 20 years ago by a Palestinian psychiatrist, Dr. Iyad El-Siraj, who wrote a piece in Time magazine called Why We Blow Ourselves Up. And this piece was written right after a Palestinian woman had gone into an Israeli cafe and detonated a bomb. And the point in his article was, a lot of people in the West see this act as being perpetrated by a crazy person. And he said, no, it's an act of desperation, that when someone uses their own body as a tool in this manner, it is an act of desperation. It is not an act of insanity. And so, James, thank you for your $2 super sticker. And I'm glad that you hear us both, that we're back on track. So I just wanted to make that point. Again, you use the word desperation, and I think that you are spot on with that. Where am I here? Okay. So with that, let me move on to the next point, which is, if we open the aperture here, if we broaden our focus, we're looking at an attack on Haitians, Cubans, Venezuelans are also being deported. Regulations that were published in February ending the TPS, the temporary protected status for Venezuelans. More than 300,000 Venezuelans are being deported. Give us your analysis, not only as an activist, but as an anthropologist, someone who studies humanity, human behavior, cultures, and societies. A lot of ethnicities of color are being deported from the United States. Your thoughts, now again, not only as a as an activist, but as an anthropologist?
Well, I mean, this is a long history of the U.S., right? So let's remember, up until 1965, the U.S. had quotas for immigration, right? The U.S. did not allow most people to come in. The U.S. let in, there's a great book called How the Irish Became White,
Mm-hmm.
let in all these Irish in the early 19 Europeans that, before they didn't even, they didn't even like the non-Anglo-Saxons, but it wasn't until the early 1900s when they wanted to reinforce the whiteness of the nation, brought in all these immigrants from Europe to basically and gave them the status of whiteness, and allowed to make the country whiter than before. So it wasn't until 1965 that the U.S. actually opened up immigration, and primarily for skilled migrants from Asia, and so on. And then that's when you have like the people from the Caribbean having access to the country and coming in. And so this is the U.S. That's the history of the U.S. It's a racial state. It's a racial state that's set on creating a monopoly around whiteness. And so, people might not want to talk about race and might not want to talk about white supremacy, but this is what it is. When you look at the global war on terror, it wasn't about just religion, because it also attacked a lot of Black Muslims in New York, in the Northeast. When you look at the U.S. Treatment of countries, right? You look at the difference between the way that the U.S. responded, for example, to when the Russian special military operation, when Russia first attacked Ukraine. And if you remember the mainstream media, people were shocked. And I remember people were saying, well, this is not supposed to happen here in Europe. You have people with blonde hair and blue eyes that are getting bombed. It's almost as if it's happening in the Middle East. There's a international hierarchy of nations, races, and people that
Mm-hmm.
has been created, for the past 500 years of European rule of the planet. And so we have to actually understand, as an anthropologist, this is my research. This way, we have to understand how it is that we see the world through these different lenses, where certain humans are more human than others. Some people are not human at all to others, right? When you hear these, the Zionist people talk about Palestinians as if they're animals, right? You have to understand that this is the way the world is structured, so that certain people are seen less than and less worthy of humane treatment. And so when I look at the policies against, when you look at Trump and like the countries, for example, that he has the ban, they're mostly from Africa, right? It's Chad, the
Mm-hmm.
Republic of Congo, Guinea, Eritrea, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, and of course, all the countries that the U.S. has destroyed, Libya, and so on and so forth. Venezuela is interesting too, though, partly
Mm-hmm.
because the reason they actually extended TPS and stuff for Venezuelans at first was to try to topple the Maduro administration. And so they wanted to create like a one Guaido, whatever. They wanted to basically, give asylum to Cubans, because, they've had a blockade against Cuba for 60 something years. And Nicaragua as well. They're against the Sandinista government there, and they're against Maduro. So they they expanded
Mm-hmm.
protection for these migrants. But now the racism of the Trump administration, I think, has
Right.
actually it goes against U.S. foreign policy, which to me is crazy, right? It's like, you don't want these migrants, but the reason we had these special laws for Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba was to actually challenge those administrations in the hand. So there are all kinds of contradictions that are coming up at the end, as we near the end of this empire. And I think this immigration policy is one of the many contradictions, but it is one of these things that actually we have to link to its U.S. foreign policy needs and interests. And until we do that, we won't be able to understand why it is so easy to rally the administration supporters against this tiny group of people, like Haitians in particular, who are impoverished, who are not trying to hurt the U.S., but who are instead being hurt by the U.S. And why is it people speak in so much glee about causing so much harm to 500,000 people who are in the country?
And you're looking at about 350,000 Venezuelans. And to your point, it's very important to remember that a lot of the Venezuelans in question were backing the play of Juan Guaido when he was being heralded as the new president of Venezuela, even though the democratically elected president was being ignored. You've got I've got some numbers here. You have deported 350,000 temporary protected status is ended in February 5th, ended February 5th, and about 350,000 are supposed to be out of the country by the 2nd of September. And I think that date has been moved up. Temporary protected status ended for 11,000 Afghans, for Cameroonians, Indians, Ecuadorians, Guatemalans. I mean, it's a whole list,
Yes.
a whole list of folks.
Meanwhile, we bring in Ukrainians and South Africans.
Meanwhile, we bring in Ukrainians and South Africans. Can you give me a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Because the administration admittedly, mistakenly, summarily deported Kilmar Armando Abrigo Garcia to El Salvador and many others. He has since been brought back to the United States and is still languishing in custody. I said at that time that this had much less to do, Abrigo Garcia's deportation had much less to do with immigration and deporting what they call illegals, that it was really a trial balloon to see how far the court would go, allowing the Trump administration to ignore due process. Now Trump is in Florida today at the opening of what they call the Alligator Alcatraz facility that officials say will eventually hold up to 5,000 people, and it opens today. Trump says he'd like to see these Alligator Alcatraz facilities in many more states. How concerned should Americans of color be that future Americans could be exiled or expelled to other countries?
Oh, very concerned. In fact, I said this. I said, you remember when they sent this person, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, to El Salvador.
Garcia.
Garcia. There was also talk that, I don't know if people remember that Trump was also talking to El Salvador about taking some of U.S. citizens who were already in prison. So this is the setup. People have to know this. And then with this budget for ICE, where people are just grabbing folks off the street, they've grabbed so many U.S. citizens already. Because if you're of color, you will be grabbed and then they'll ask questions later, right? So they're doing this, Africans, Black people, African Americans, Latinos, multi-generations that have been here. Remember, because, the border crossed Mexico, not the other way around, right? And so part of that is we have to actually understand how this will work. What's fascinating to me about having these detention centers in the U.S. for migrants is that you want them deported, but why are you giving multi-million-dollar contracts to companies like Geo Metro, which is our these vast prisons, private prisons, right? Why are you giving billions of dollars for detention when you want to deport? And part of that is a money maker. It's money sent to the people who fund him, right? But we do have to worry. We have to be worried because they're starting to denaturalize people. So even people who have citizenship, who are not born here, they can strip your citizenship. But African Americans in particular need to be concerned because and indigenous people, because African Americans and indigenous people did not get citizenship till which amendment was that? The 13th Amendment?
14th Amendment.
The 14th Amendment, right?
Right.
And so this is, if we really look at the logic where this is going, we actually have to be concerned about going from testing it on immigrants, on Black and brown immigrants, because they're easily expendable, because people don't care about Black and brown immigrants in the same way that they care about Ukrainians, right? Even Canada's, they're not white Canadians in ICE custody in the U.S. And so that's a whole other conversation, but still, so they can try this with these immigrants because they see them as expendable. They're coming for U.S. citizens who are naturalized next. After that, they're going to go for U.S. born citizens and use that as an excuse to ship you to El Salvador, create that as like some kind of, U.S. territory, call it that, so that they can send more and more people over. And a lot of people of color are going to get caught up in that dragnet. And we actually need to be very careful and be very open eye about what's happening so that we can fight it before it takes place.
I have been saying for a very long time that Trump's attack on the 14th Amendment is relevant to the African American community because the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, and that's what gave enslaved Africans, formerly enslaved Africans, citizenship.
Right.
That the 13th Amendment abolished enslavement, and the 14th Amendment made those former enslaved Africans citizens. And so when he attacks the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship,
right,
he is attacking the mechanism that gave our ancestors, that made our ancestors citizens.
Right.
You got to connect these dots.
Right. And that's something we should really be weary about, and we should really focus on. And it's not alarmist to call that into play, because you can see we're at a moment of retrenchment again. We're at a moment of repression. This seems to me like the end of the Reconstruction era again, right? Just like the end of Reconstruction after slavery in the 1870s, you had 20 something, 30 years of like, it seemed like Black folks were getting some rights, the vote and so on and so forth. And then you have Jim Crow in 1890, in the late 1890s. And so this is the moment you have civil rights and all of that stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, a major retrenchment is happening, right? And so we have, I do think African Americans need to take this seriously. I do think they're trying it out on immigrants. And if we don't actually see that, if none of us are free, if all of us aren't free, and we actually have to start with that process in terms of thinking about our relationship to each other as human beings against this repressive global order that's run by the West, and that we need to actually really help bring down in order for the rest of us to live easy, to live a life worth living.
How significant is it to you, as I called out Vice President Harris for going to CARICOM and trying to twist the arms of the members of CARICOM to be that Black minstrel face on the U.S. reattack of Haiti? Hakeem Jeffries, the minority speaker, went to CARICOM and tried to leverage CARICOM. We don't hear the Congressional Black Caucus making the connection as Trump is attacking birthright citizenship. We don't hear members of the Congressional Black Caucus screaming, saying, that's a direct attack on us. Is this just Wilmer Leon mindless rhetoric, or should people be making these connections?
People should definitely be making that connection. But, remember, it was Glenn Ford, may his soul rest in peace, that called them the black leadership class, leadership class, right? And so, Black politics, U.S. Black politics, we've lost so much. The Congressional Black Congress used to call itself like the what is it? The
conscience of the Congress. And they are now unconscious.
Right. And they're like all funded by AIPAC for the most part. They a lot of them support genocide. it was Maxine Waters, for example, that really fought for Aristide when the U.S. When the U.S. Did the coup d'état, when the Marines flew in and took him out. It was Maxine Waters. So it was the NAACP that sued the Trump administration in 2018 when they tried to get rid of TPS back then, right? And so we're not connecting. We're definitely not connecting this, but we're in a Congress that's completely beholden to AIPAC, and that's completely, since Obama, become so supportive of U.S. empire that is actually very scary to me. That sometimes you have African Americans against Black immigrants, right? As opposed to thinking about the problem that we have is not actually these immigrants, but it's actually the structures of power that are set to basically the neoliberalism that's basically supposed to strip you of all your social services and all the stuff that you pay your taxes for, so that the rich can enjoy their tax cuts while we pay for them, right? And so I do think this connection needs to be made, but not with the Congressional Black Caucus, which is completely sold out the people. I think we need new formations. Congress is not that formation, because Congress is gone, and it's and these elders where you have like Clyburn and all these people, who are holding on to these positions and holding on to the old Democrats who don't want to hear what the young people have to say. Then, we need to actually get rid of these misleaders and find our leadership amongst ourselves for somewhere else, not from the people in Congress.
2 points, and then I'll let you go.
And quickly to CARICOM, we have to understand CARICOM is a Caribbean community that's completely run by a vassal states. And the way the U.S. works, if you read the Global Fragility Act, which was an act that's basically set up to say that the U.S. will use, they don't say proxies, but they're proxies in the region to do their dirty work. And in Haiti, the U.S. used Mia Motley, Hershon Ali, if that's his name, the prime minister of, is it not Barbados, of Guyana, right? To do its dirty work in Haiti, to basically force this presidential council that's not voted, but also, CARICOM is doing terrible business. They're being used against Venezuela. They're the territorial problems that Guyana and Venezuela have is being preyed upon by the U.S. So to put these countries against each other, to put them against China. And so these are all vassal states. And the difference between these states and Haiti is that Haiti is still, even though it's fighting back, whereas people, at least we know we're under U.S. empire. These other people don't know that they're being run by empire.
Kevin Baptiste, thank you for that $10 super sticker and his comment that Dr. Pierre, you are an excellent analyst and you're exhibiting thoughts that are too rational for the United States. And that is intent on self-destruction. And he applauds you for your brilliance. And so my final question to you is, what are the 2 or 3 most salient points that you want the audience to understand? Before I get to that, one more point. General Michael Langley and his attack on the Burkinabe president of Burkina Faso, Traoré. What is, his calling for Traoré to be arrested, others interpreting that as, and we know that there have been attempts on Traoré's life. What does all of that say to you as we now are, I believe, starting to see the dawn of a new day with the Alliance of Sahel States? Botswana is meeting with Traoré. There are a number of other African countries that are starting to see the dawn of a new day. Your thoughts, Dr. Pierre?
Well, Langley is trying to keep his job. So let's be real, because they're trying to get rid of AFRICOM, right? I mean, Trump is trying to get rid of AFRICOM, and AFRICOM is the Africa Command that was put together in 2007 by George W. Bush, but really consecrated with the first leader was Kip Ward, African American soldier, and then it was under Obama that AFRICOM really expanded, because there's a saying that says when the hammer goes into the forest, the trees say the handle is one of us, right? And so that was Obama
I like
and AFRICOM, right? And so AFRICOM extended its ensconced itself in all the military, a lot of military formations on the African continent. So we have to be very worried about that. And I'm happy that Langley is losing his job, because basically Trump is retrenching, removing it's trying to close down AFRICOM and basically turn it right back, turn Africa back to the European command. So it's a very interesting thing. So Langley is doing his job as the coon of empire, in terms of really going against Black liberation. But we've always had
Sure.
these coons for empire. So there's that. We have to actually really be concerned about what's happening in the Sahel, in the sense that you also have France, funding ISIS the same way that they funded ISIS, in Syria. And look what happened to Syria, because empire doesn't give up. It took them 16 years to bring Syria down. And so we also have to be very concerned about what France is doing in the Sahel, because they've lost, their access to, the minerals that they were getting. These countries are nationalizing gold and so on and so forth. So we have to be very, very careful about that. And so I do think it's a good thing that AFRICOM is ending, but also that we should not rest on our laurels, because Trump just signed a supposed deal between Rwanda and Congo, but it's really about getting all the rare earth minerals that it can no longer get from China. And so even though it looks like the U.S. is moving away from Africa, it's actually using more and more of its proxies, using these same tactics that empire have always used, to strip away resources, to create destabilization, and to not allow us to have self-determination. So we need to actually push for self-determination. We need to come together in the global South, Africa, Asia, South and Latin America, in order, and those of us within empire, right? The communities that are stuck in the belly of the beast, we actually need to see our common cause.
And to your point about Syria, just a couple of hours ago, I believe the Trump administration just lifted sanctions, or most of the sanctions, against Syria. And so one just has to ask the question, how does a guy who 6 months ago had a $10 million bounty on his head, how does he become the president of Syria in a few months and now the sanctions are removed? I don't know.
Right, but also just think about how it is that sanctions are used as a weapon of war.
Absolutely.
It is the sanctions that actually hollowed out the Syrian government's Syrian government the past 20 years or so, right? It is the sanctions that they thought would destroy Iran, when they attacked. It's the sanctions that are, wreaking havoc in Venezuela, in Cuba, and so on. And so, but that also tells you that the U.S. has nothing to do with democracy, because this is ISIS, a head chopper that they put in place so that it could turn around and normalize relationship with the Zionist terrorist entity, settler colonial terrorist entity that's committing a genocide. And so they put this guy who's there, and people don't even think he's Syrian, this al-Jilani guy. And so it tells you that when the U.S. wants the regime change, what they want to do in Iran, what they've done in Haiti, is put in these puppets that they can turn around and use to further maintain their power. So yeah, so I mean, the U.S. is, to me, the biggest gangster in the world is the U.S. government, and so we cannot talk about gangs and gang leaders if we don't talk about what the U.S. and its other people, like France and Britain, who played baby brother imperialists in Canada, right? And so we cannot talk about gangsters if we don't think about the gangsters of empire.
Well, I think you just wrapped it up for me right there. Dr. Jemima Pierre, thank you. You are always so gracious when I call you. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. You brought it today, as you always do. I greatly appreciate it and look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much for having me. Wonderful. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. And folks, some of you all had pinged me asking me about this shirt. You've seen the black one before. And this is the artwork of Jerry Simpson, known as Goss. And the character in the middle, this is Otis right here. And Jerry created Otis. And Otis represents those elements of Black people that many of us have been convinced are less than beautiful. Our hair, our lips, this is Otis. And so you can go to Jerry. You can just Google Jerry Simpson, Gerry Simpson. He is the creator of the Goss Art Gallery. And Jerry right now is facing a couple medical challenges. My dear brother, praying for you. And I know things will come out beautifully on the other side of the process. And again, so look up Jerry Simpson, Gerry Simpson. And you can learn more about his phenomenal artwork, and you can learn more about Otis. So with that, all right, folks, we got 8,700 subscribers. We got 25 proud members of the Connecting the Dots Club. That's 25 folks who decided, yes, I'm going to skip a latte or maca, loca, chamocha, frothy with extra cream, and decided instead of that, they're going to join the Connecting the Dots Club. And they're doing that because they want to support the truth. And I truly appreciate it. We dearly, as Duke Ellington would say, we love you dearly for it. Now, the mission is 100 members and 10,000 subscribers. We really need you all to hit that join button. $5 a month. $5 a month. And that's less than a gas station sandwich, or what I love, the gas station chicken down there at the gas station down there on 14th and what street is that? What street is Tom? 14th and anyway, down there in DC. Anyway, so let's grow these things, please. This is funny. Let's grow these things like your auntie's plant collection. I like that. Thank you very much for that comment. With one purpose, with love and a whole lot of sunlight. Truly, truly need you all to hit that like button, folks. Hit that subscribe button on the way out today. Would greatly got a new member here, I think. Who is this? 74th Street is a new member. See, 74th Street. Thank you very much. Brother Makalo, I'm not gonna butcher your name, but thank you very much for being a new member. See, we got two right off the top. There we go. 74th Street. Thank you very much. You became a YouTube member. And brother, Makalo, problem is the screen's small and I can't see the name. Ungoja, thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member. And if I mispronounced your name, please forgive me and tolerate my ignorance. The lightning is striking out there again. It's a power surge that took us down the first time, and I'm feeling it hitting us again. So let me say, Dr. Jemima Pierre, again, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you all for listening, joining the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. If you get a minute, Google Jerry Simpson, check out his artwork. And because he's a phenomenal artist, a dear friend, a phenomenal brother, and check him out if you can. Stay tuned. New episode tomorrow. Dr. Linwood Tawhid is going to join us tomorrow to talk about the lipstick on the pig bill. That's what I call it. Donald Trump's big, ugly boondoggle. I call it the lipstick on a pig bill. Please follow and subscribe, leave a review, share the show, follow us on social media. All the links are below. This is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. If this damn lipstick on a pig bill passes the House, millions of people will lose their health insurance under the bill. But here's the thing to keep in mind. I'm going to make this point. We're going to talk about it more with Dr. Tawhid tomorrow, but this is something that you folks need to understand. Millions are going to lose their health care, but that doesn't mean they won't get sick. That doesn't mean they won't get hit by the head by the ball in a baseball, softball game. They won't break their arms playing tennis. They won't stop getting hit by cars so they're still going to need medical care. And so what are hospitals going to have to do to cover the uninsured people that show up in their emergency rooms? Women won't stop having babies, even though they're uninsured. What are they going to do? They're going to show up at the emergency room. What are hospitals going to have to do? Raise the rates on those of us that are insured to cover the ones that aren't. So this big, beautiful boondoggle, the lipstick on a pig that Donald Trump is trying to pass here, folks, it's not going to accomplish what it set out to accomplish, other than providing billions of dollars of tax breaks to those wealthy Americans that actually don't necessarily need it. So with that said, see y'all tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful, blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.